I'm Cecil, and I'm an alcoholic. And I know you too. I'm very grateful to be here tonight and be here sober. For all of you out there that are wondering about the little old wife, she's doing just great. She come through that operation fantastic. I'm kind of tired because I went to that hospital at 5:30 this morning and I just left a few minutes ago. But I'm where I'm supposed to be tonight. I didn't have to go out and get drunk over that. I started drinking at a very early age, somewhere around 14, 15 years old, sipping on that White Lightning back in Arkansas. I needed it to get away to do the things that everybody else done without it. I didn't have the courage or the backbone or whatever it took to do anything without the crutch of alcohol. I didn't drink. I've always said I didn't think I was alcoholic from the start, and I still don't really believe I was. I know I must have had the chemical makeup in my body, but I drank for a long, long time without getting in any trouble, without having any blackouts, and I didn't believe there was such things as blackouts. And when I look back today at my first blackout, I think it's when I crossed that so-called invisible line from control-type drinking to alcoholic-type drinking. Because from that day until the day I took my last drink, which happened to be November the 24th, 1966, I went steadily downhill. I never had any upturns during that time. I had some periods of sobriety or some periods of dryness through that time. When the wife and I first got married, I went to work for the city in her little hometown there in Arkansas. I was water superintendent, so I was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even if I went out of town, I had to leave a phone number where I could be reached. And I knew at that time that sometimes when I drank, I went too far with it, and I couldn't quit when I wanted to. And we went to a VA dance one Saturday night down in Dermont. I got all drunked out of my mind, and I guess embarrassed the living hell out of her that night. And she never said a thing until Monday morning when I started to work on Monday morning. When I kissed her goodbye, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "When are you going to do something about your drinking?" And from that time, for 5 years, the next 5 years, I never took another drink. I quit that job and went back into construction, and shortly after that I moved out to California. I got out to California, and as soon as I got out there, I started trying to get a hold of an old friend of mine that I grew up with that had moved to California earlier. I started trying to get a hold of his name or his phone number, address. And about 6 months later, I finally got a phone number. And I called him, and he didn't live but just a short ways away. Now, mind you, I haven't had a drink in over 5 years. And he asked me if I still indulged, and I said yes. That, to me, had to be alcoholic type thinking. But anyway, he said, well, pick up a six-pack on the way over. And I said, all right, and I did. And I was off and running. Short time later, operating engineers went on strike and shut the carpenter work down that I was doing. I was building the San Bernardino Freeway overpasses. And my brother-in-law got me a job posting bills with him. And man, that was some kind of job. We worked in teams of 2. And I don't know of a team down there that didn't drink from the time they started in the morning until they quit at night. It was an everyday thing. And that's when I really started to get in trouble. I worked with an old man that drank Calvert Black Label. And we'd stop at the liquor store. We went to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, and by the time we'd get down there and get our truck loaded and get out and drive over to East Los Angeles, that liquor store opened at 6 o'clock would be opened. And I always carried a brand new pack of cigarettes with me every morning to work. And I'd get out of the truck, go in that liquor store, buy 2 half pints of Shinleys and a couple of Cokes, and I'd stuff them half pints in my belt, and I'd come back out the door with them Cokes in one hand, opening a pack of cigarettes in the other, and that I had took in with me when I went in. So if we were being tailed that day, I went in to buy a pack of cigarettes. I did a lot of, most of my drinking when I wasn't on the job. I drank in bars. I liked that dim light, stick smoke, and loud women. And I'd go to the bars, and all these other guys had these little gals sitting beside of them, and I got me one, and I got caught. And I got kicked right out on my rear. And a short time later, I was in and out so much there for a while that they were taking bets at work as to whether I was living at home or was kicked out. And I couldn't relate any of this trouble that I was having to alcohol. I just didn't have a very understanding wife. She just didn't understand. And a short time later, I got laid off for 2 weeks. The driver that I was working with, I was helper and he was the driver, and the driver that I was working with got fired for drinking on the job. Now, the posting superintendent wrote it up that he laid me off for 2 weeks because I didn't report the driver. And my mind was so fogged up with alcohol that I couldn't understand, and I couldn't see that he was doing me a favor. He knew I was drinking also, and he was giving me a break. But he was wrong. How dare him ask me to squeal on somebody? He didn't really intend for me to squeal on it. He just wrote it up that way, so he didn't have to fire me. But I got mad, and I decided that I ought to leave that place, that I needed to get away from them drunken bill posters over in L.A., because that's where all my trouble was working with all them drunken bill posters. And I heard that they had an opening the company had an opening in Phoenix. So while I'm off for 2 weeks, I come trotting off over to Phoenix and talked to the boss over here and filled out an application. And the guy that got fired with me came over also, and I got the job. I went back to L.A. and told Dorothy we were going to move to Phoenix. And she said, "You can move to Phoenix. I'm staying. I'm not moving to Phoenix for no damn drunk." And I assured her that if I got over there and got away from them drunken bill posters, that everything would be all right. That it was the environment I was in that was causing me to drink the way I was drinking. Well, we finally made a deal. She told me that if I do my drinking at home, that she would buy me a case of beer a week, because that's enough for any normal drinker. And no doubt that is enough for any normal drinker. I know a lot of people today that don't drink a case of beer a month. I don't even know why they buy it to start with. But I do know them people today. I didn't know them back then. I didn't want to know them back then. I didn't have no use for them. They didn't drink like I did. She said if I would do that, I would do my drinking at home, and she'd buy me a case of beer a week, and she'd move to Phoenix with me. And I agreed to that, and we moved to Phoenix, and she bought me a case of beer the day we got over here. I went to work on Monday morning, and on Friday, I still had beer left. And she went out and bought me another case of beer. Well, on Wednesday of the next week, I started to have to stop in the bars and get me a couple of quick ones, because that supply at home was getting low. I'm talking about desperately type low. Well, come Friday, I got my first payday in Phoenix. I went to work Friday morning, and that little woman didn't see me again until I got off from work Monday night. You see, I done run into another one of them drunken bill posters. Sick? Yeah. Insanity? Very much so. That has to be insane. Not too long after that, I'll come home one evening, and you people might know the Pinot Bar up on 27th Avenue. I lived right behind that, right down the alley. And I went down there to buy a pack of cigarettes one afternoon, because that's the only place they sold cigarettes in bars, beer joints. There's grocery stores and places like that didn't sell cigarettes. I didn't know it if they did. I never bought any there. And I got back about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours later, and she had called central office. Can you imagine calling central office and talking to them about me being an alcoholic? The only thing was wrong was people, places, and things. If people just get out of my damn life and leave me alone, I was free white and 21, and I could damn well drink if I wanted to. I kept beer on the table, or food on the table, and beer too. More beer than food. And roof over their head, and if I wanted to drink, it wasn't nobody's damn business but mine. And that's just the way I felt about it. I didn't think she had any business meddling in my drinking. Well, she had called, and handwriting was very clear on the wall that I either return that call or get out. And I didn't have any place to go. I didn't have any money. And I called, And then a few minutes later, old Bob C. called me. And we talked on the phone for a few minutes, and I met him over at over at 7th Avenue in Glendale at an AA meeting that night. And I went to that meeting not for Cecil, but to get the wife off of my back. I went in there, and they was a bunch of old jokers. I'm talking about like me and Warren are now. Warren wasn't there that night. If he did, I don't remember it. Anyway, they were a bunch of more in there about like him and myself, and they talked about how many wives they'd lost and how many jobs they'd lost, and a lot of them had done a whole lot of time in jail. I'd had some one night stand in jail or a one weekend stand in jail over in L.A. County Jail. And at that time, that's the only time I'd ever been arrested, and that was for public drunk. I liked what I heard that night. I liked the gleam in the guy's eyes and the smile on their face. And they told me that if I didn't believe all the things that I heard that they had done would happen to me, to just hang on to that bottle. And I hung on to that bottle, and every damn one of them happened. I had car wrecks. I lost a home, the first house I ever bought in my life. I lost it due to drinking. I had a lot of things happen to me. Some of my worst and hardest drinking came after I made that meeting. I stayed sober that time for, I don't know, might have been 3 weeks. But I'd get well, and I didn't need you people. By the time I'd get well and the wife would start speaking to me again, I'd have a few coins in my pocket, and I'd quit going to meetings, and I'd get drunk. And every time it was going to be different. Every time I was going to control it. I was going to drink, like it says in that first paragraph in chapter 3. I didn't want to drink like my fellow men, because I know a lot of them that got falling down drunk. I wanted to drink like I used to drink. I had a huge capacity, and I didn't get drunk. I could get up on that little cloud 9, that little plateau, and drink all day and all night and not get drunk. That was in the beginning, not at the end. And that's where I wanted to get back to. And I will assure you that if you think you can ever get back to there, there's no way possible. I went to the extremes that somebody told me one time that if you eat lard, that you wouldn't get drunk. I made me a lard sandwich. It didn't work. I got drunk and I got sick. Oh, did I get sick. But I kept coming back to you people. I'll rephrase that. My wife and my boss kept running me back to you people. You know, somewhere along in there, I started going to the Welcome Hand group.
and I met old Warren, and he started dragging me around by the ear to meetings. Him and Dorothy had plot, I think. You know, how they was going to get me sober. They're pretty good buddies. They still plot sometimes. But I couldn't stay away from booze because I was still trying to do it for my wife and to save that job. November the 23rd in 1966, I got fired off of that job because I had been drunk all day long. And I had a whole bunch of work that had to be done that day. And it didn't get done. I don't even remember going back into the shop that night. But I remember when I got home, sometimes that night, and my wife told me in no uncertain terms it was one thing to have a drunk around the house bringing home a payday, and it's something else to have a drunk around the house not bringing home the payday. So there's the door. Hit it. I got up the next morning, which was Thanksgiving Day, and for the first time in my life, I was honest with Cecil. I looked myself in the mirror that morning for what I really was, where I was really going, and what booze was doing to me. It wasn't people, places, and things. It was booze. I went to that Maryville morning meeting that morning. For the first time, I went strictly for Cecil. I didn't have that job anymore, and I really expected that my clothes would be laying on the front lawn when I got home. I didn't have no other place to go but you people. And you welcomed me back just like you had all the times before. And I had been in and out for 6 long years, somewhere in that neighborhood anyway. And every time I came back, you welcomed me with the same love, the same passion and understanding as you had done before. Old Danny Kay was at that meeting that morning, and Danny and I came in at about the same time into the program. Danny got sober, and I didn't. He walked up after the meeting, put his arm around me, and said, "Cece, you've been around long enough that you know what you have to do. I've told you, and everyone else in here has told you what you have to do. So the only thing I can say to you this morning is that if any time I don't see you at a meeting, then I'm going to figure that you want to get drunk worse than you want to stay sober." And I never forgot that. I started working those steps. They had done a lot of talking about those steps, and I had done a lot of lipping those steps. In that 6 years, I had talked an awful lot about those steps. I had read them maybe 3 or 4 times. I know I read them every time they asked me to read the 5th chapter. At least I read them that many times. But I had never attempted to work them, to apply them in any shape, fashion, or form to my life. And I'm here to tell you today that if you don't apply them, they don't work. They do nothing for you reading them out of that book. You have to work them. You have to work them in order. That's the reason they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's so you don't get confused and mix them up. They won't work. Any other? I tried it. I worked one time, and then I tried to work 12. Well, you know it's hard to give something away when you ain't got it. They talked a whole lot about this, giving it away. You have to give it away in order to keep it. And that didn't make no sense to me either. How are you going to give something away and keep it all at the same time? And besides that, they didn't want me to charge these people anything either. And why do you go help somebody if you ain't going to get something out of it? Well, I've got a lot out of it today. I've got a way of life today that is so great that I wonder sometimes how a drunk like me could have a life like I have today. Have a family like I have today. You know, I went down to that hospital this morning, took my wife down for that operation, and there was 14 people sitting in that waiting room while my wife was being operated on. I couldn't have got 14 people out to my house or down to a hospital to see me or my wife or anybody else when I was drinking. Especially them people, because most of them was family. And family didn't want nothing to do with me. They'd done just about disowned me. Some of you people were up at the cabin and met Quentin and Sarah Dorothy's brother and sister-in-law at our gathering up there last fall. He was down there. He made that meeting up there at the cabin, and it was the very first AA meeting that he ever attended. And he was relating some with that today. Kenny was down there, and we were down in the coffee shop having coffee, and we were sitting there talking to Quentin, and Quentin was relating some to Kenny about that meeting. And it's beautiful. You see, when I came here, he and I didn't get along. He didn't want nothing to do with me, and he wanted my wife to get rid of me. He even talked to her about that, and that made me mad. I didn't think it was any of his business. I didn't realize at the time that that's his sister that he's talking to, and he has every right in the world to talk to her anytime he wants to. But that didn't make any difference to me. But after trying to the best of my ability to work those 12 steps and starting to apply them in my life and find a God that I understand today and getting a little faith in him, listening to you people coming to these meetings, I have regained quite a bit of respect from my family. And I got it over a period of years because they didn't do it right away. You see, all that 6 years that I was running in and out, every time I would come back to you people, I would go to them and say, I'm going to AA, I'm going to be all right, and I hope you'll forgive me and all this kind of good stuff. And then the next week I'd be out and be drunk again. So they didn't believe me when I came back that last time. I had to stay around for a long time before anyone believed that I was going to stay sober. I got to the point there, it got so hard for me to get back, and I'm going to relate this especially for you new people. I got to the point, I was so ashamed of myself that I couldn't go back to a meeting. I don't care what day of the week I come off but drunk. I didn't go to a meeting until Monday night. And Monday afternoon I'd call Warren up and say, "Are you going to be at the meeting tonight?" And he'd say, "Yes, I'm going to be there." I didn't believe that Warren, I thought everybody else had give up on me. But I didn't believe that Warren had. And I could come back to the meeting as long as I knew he was going to be there. I don't know what would have happened to me had I thought that Warren had give up on me also. I don't know whether I would have ever got the courage to face them people alone again after going back out and drinking. I don't know today, and I'm quite sure that I wouldn't be able to face you people if I went out and drank again. I don't have a drinking problem today. I have a thinking problem. You know, I hadn't had a drink in, tomorrow will be 24 years. If God's willing and I live until tomorrow. So there's no way I can have a drinking problem today. But I do have a thinking problem. And to keep that thinking in order and keep it going in the right direction, I have to come to these meetings and you people. You people are the ones that I get my strength through. You people are the one that gave me a God that I can understand. You people keep me consciously aware that it's God that keeps me sober, not Cecil. Because you see, if I get away and stay away too long, then that old ego builds up, and Cecil can do any damn thing he wants to. And he would drink again, and I know that. You see, I got away from, I kind of graduated. How's my time running, Warren? I graduated for about 5 or 6, 7 years. I don't even know exactly how long, but it was quite a while. Here about 4 years ago, about 4 years ago, I got back active again. But I got to chasing that dollar, and I didn't really need you people. And I'd go once a year to get a chip. Sometimes maybe I'd go 2 or 3 times. But I always made my birthday meeting and got the chip. I went out to a meeting that I'd helped Warren start and a couple of other guys. And I attended 3 or 4 weeks there, helping them get it started, and then it was all taken care of. I turned it over to them. I didn't go back no more. I knew all about them steps. I didn't need them. I done found the God that I understand. And but I called him up on my 20th birthday and told him I was going to make that meeting. And I went out there, and it was a step meeting. And I'm pretty sure we were sharing on the 10th step. And Warren gave me that 20-year chip. Now, he and Dorothy had been after me for quite a while to get back into meeting, to get going back to the meetings and get active. So I was aware of the fact that they thought that I needed some meetings, but I wasn't aware that I needed them. But he gave me that chip and asked me if I'd share with them on the 10th step for a little bit. And I didn't have anything to say. I bet I didn't talk 3 minutes. I literally had nothing to say. And on the way home, I got to thinking, you don't even deserve that chip. You shouldn't have it in your pocket. You haven't done one thing all year to deserve that chip. I hadn't helped anyone. I hadn't even 12-stepped anyone at a meeting because I hadn't been to the meetings. And then when I did go to the meetings, they asked me to share, and I didn't have nothing to say. You can't give it away if you don't have it. And I didn't have it. I went to a meeting the next night, and the next night, and I got active. I joined Cactus Capers a week later, and I instantly made friends with an old guy named Maynard. Everybody knows Maynard. Sometimes they call him Cecil now. But we started running around together and going to a lot of places and a lot of meetings. And I know Maynard has been good for me. He helped me get back in the program. He helped me get active. I am very grateful for that friendship today. I started working those steps again, and I started taking some inventory. And that's when it scared the living hell out of me. Because when I started taking a look at Cecil, then I saw how far back down that ladder I had slid in that old way of thinking. I was one think away from a drunk, and I was so close to that drunk, it was scary. You know, it talks about in the big book that there will come a time when if we don't have a spiritual foundation to rely on, that there's no other defense against taking that drink. And I did not have that spiritual foundation at that time in my life. All I needed was for the situation to arise, and I would have drank. I know that today. The sad part of it is that I thought I was doing so great. I really and truly thought I was doing great. And I was just a heartbeat away from disaster. Today I know where I'm at. Today I am so grateful for this program and you people, for a higher power that I choose to call God, a higher power that I have faith in today. You see, I had no faith when I got here. I know today that it's God that keeps me sober. But I also know that it's this program and you people that keeps me conscious of the fact that it's God that keeps me sober. Thank you.